Siomra Beag.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Sure Look. Sure Listen, the podcast that takes a pop at culture.
Sure Look, Sure Listen. Sure Look, Sure Listen.
Sure look, sure listen.
Sure look, sure listen.
Sure Look, Sure Listen.
Sure look, sure listen.
Sure look, sure listen. Oh, very good, Benjamin. You've made a terrible mistake there. What you meant to say was welcome to Michael and Benjamin's X-Men 97 fan cast, the world's leading X-Men 97 fan cast. But sure, look, we don't have time to really get into arguing about that because unfortunately we have un-X-Men 97 stuff to look at, including 2 serial killer movie trailers this week, Unfrosted and Them the Scare, and I've seen... Yeah, that was a good joke. Thanks for that little squinty face there, Ben. That was a good joke. And I've seen all of 3 Body Problem on Netflix, and we're going to do a little bit of a spoilery review of it. And both of us have seen the main point of this podcast now, episode 3 of X-Men 97.
Sure, listen, Michael, if that wasn't enough, we got a brand new character reveal in X-Men 97 this week, and we decided to go, who the hell? Who the hell is Madelyne Pryor?
Now, Benjamin, I think you're doing a little bit there, but your audio is cutting out because you're being too loud.
Oh, is that because we do this over Google Meet, and Google Meet has a reducing noise feature, which is simultaneously the hindrance of my personal, professional, and podcasting life?
Yeah, just quieten down a little bit, Ben. As Taylor Swift would say, you're doing too much, Benjamin. You're being too loud. But that's neither
my
here
middle
nor
name.
there. It is actually Ben Taylor Swift Colopy. But Benjamin, look, we've no time to be talking about your middle name because we've to look at one of our favourite genres. We've to look at the crass commercialism of the dramatisation of a movie about a product and how it got made.
Ah, Michael, my favourite. Well, it's become 2 distinct subgenres, Michael, in the late stage capitalist hellscape that we call 2024.
Yeah. Go on.
So on the one side of it, we have the all-time glorification and myth-making of capitalist wins.
Oh, like the Nike thing about shoes.
Yeah, about Air Jordan and how 2 white men exploited a black man into making a bunch of shoes, but he made money off them, so it's not exploitation. It's not.
Look, I think he did all right, Benjamin. I think he's all right.
Yeah, all right. Michael Jordan did fine. That's fair.
He did all right. He's done a lot better than either of us. We've been exploiting each other now for nearly 7 years, and neither of us have got rich. Maybe it's the mutual thing that's the problem.
Well, it's also the fact that I haven't told you about the many, many lucrative deals I've made on the side and made a mint out of.
Oh, you son of a bitch. That could be true.
But come here to me. There's 2 distinct genres. One of them is that, Jesus, wasn't capitalism great? Look at this product and how it did.
Tetris.
Tetris is another great example of that. One man went into Russia in the Cold War to make sure that Americans could play a block game.
Yeah, it was Taron Egerton. McDonald's.
One man went in and exploited a bunch of guys who had a pretty good idea about making food a bit faster and more convenient to eat, and then ousted them out of their own company and became the founder.
Yeah, and he was Batman as well.
Yeah, Michael Keaton does that in all of his roles.
Yeah, that's actually how he took over Wayne Corp. Ben, but what's the second version of this genre?
The second version of it is, Michael, look at this mad product. I wonder how that got made. I bet it'd be pretty funny if we set it in a hyper-reality where it really, really mattered and the stakes were quite high.
Very good. I like the look of this trailer. So it's Jerry Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld's back.
And he's the inventor. Ben, they never actually say it during this. I don't know why. They never say the product. I assume it's Pop-Tarts.
It is Pop-Tarts. It's the great race for some kind of pastry bake in the morning.
Yeah. Now, my recollection, Benjamin, is we here in Ireland didn't get Pop-Tarts until the late 80s or early 90s. But apparently they've been around since the 60s.
Yeah, sure, we didn't get any American exports, Michael, until we invented the television. And
That's
then
true.
The television was brought in and we realised that there was a huge gap in our lives, possibly a manufactured gap in our lives, Michael, for all things American. And we said, Jesus, get that globalism over here now.
Give us bloody pizza, give us bloody Pop-Tarts, give us diabetes. Just send it all over.
Send it all over. But of course, Michael, there's a very complex history to Ireland joining the globalist market revolution. All to do with us joining the European Union around 1972. But we can't get into that on this podcast.
No, that's on our other podcast, Benjamin. Ireland Brexit with Ben.
Mud Huts and the British Empire. That's what it's called. But come here to me.
Yes.
This looks to be a bit of crack, doesn't it?
It does. It looks like a bit of crack. It's a bit of Wes Anderson. It's a little bit of snap, crackle and popper here. And they're real and they're going to beat you up.
Michael, what a cast. Stacked.
Jerry Seinfeld's in it. Your favourite, your personal favourite. You've said Jerry Seinfeld has never said or done anything wrong.
I see. This is the really unfortunate thing, Michael. Every once in a while, when you're putting me in a hyper misogynistic bit,
yeah,
you've heard that expression: a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yes, I have said that.
Yeah. In this case, an aspersion casting co-host is right far too often. Yeah, to be honest, because I do love Seinfeld. I think Seinfeld is one of the greatest sitcoms ever committed to celluloid.
That's why you wanted to call this podcast "What's the Deal with Pop Culture?"
Yeah, I would have loved that. That actually would have brought me a great deal of joy.
Really?
I would literally cosplay as Jerry Seinfeld in every episode of this podcast, and you would be Michael Costanza.
Yeah, well, that was the problem, wasn't it? That I couldn't do a convincing George, and I refused to let my hairline thin that much. But
yeah, and then we got Michael Richardson in, and he kept slurring black people on the podcast. It was very awkward.
No use at all. Time makes fools of us all, though, Ben, because now I have less hair than George Costanza. But Benjamin, look, Unfrosted looks good. I think we'll probably go see it. I actually, despite your rhetoric about living in a capitalist hellscape, I like these product movies. I think they're generally quite fun.
But this is the dichotomy of the product movie, Michael, because this one is played in exceptionally for comedic effect, as in it's the same genre of Anchorman being a realistic depiction of the news in the 1960s.
They seem to be going for an Oppenheimer style Cold War space race, nuclear race setting.
Yeah,
but it's about pop.
Yeah. It's really interesting for several reasons, and primarily because the history of Kellogg's in general, fucking fascinating.
Absolute mentlers.
Yeah, don't be touching yourself. Have some cornflakes instead.
Have an old rolled out cornflake instead of a wank.
Don't you be having lustful thoughts about that, young lady. Focus on your milk and frosted flakes.
Yeah. No, the guy who invented cornflakes was against frosted flakes, Ben.
Was he?
Oh, he hated that shit.
Was he indeed?
He was like, make it more boring if possible.
Yeah, just don't stimulate the mind in any way, because the mind leads to the penis, and the penis leads to fucking
and if anyone's
self-pleasure.
If anyone's having his great concern was anybody having fruity, flavorful, sugary sweets. It wasn't childhood obesity; it was a wanking epidemic.
Yeah, sugar stimulates the sexual organ. Can't be having that.
Yeah.
Michael, if ever there was
keep away from oysters.
If ever there was proof that we do this podcast purely for ourselves these days, this might
can't publish this. This is unpublishable.
But anyway, Jerry Seinfeld back. Melissa McCarthy is in it. That's a pretty big get. We love Melissa McCarthy. She's in everything.
All right.
And then there's it's pretty much a who's who then, Michael, of American comedians. Now, unfortunately, Amy Schumer's in it. I mean, that's pretty bad.
Oh, your long-standing beef with Amy Schumer never ceases to amaze me.
Hang on now, I think it's the world's long-standing beef with fucking Amy Schumer at this point. But Hugh Grant is there, Michael.
He'll be in anything. He'll be in anything, Benjamin.
Christian Slater popped up there at one point.
Very exciting. Christian Slater also will be in anything ever since Mr. Robot.
Yeah, 100%. Bill Burr is playing JFK, which is an inspired bit of casting.
Is that who that was? We didn't see him in the trailer, did we? We only heard his voice. Or did we see him?
Oh, no, he's there. He's there in a full wig.
Okay, that was JFK. Okay, I got the JFK reference, but I didn't know that was him.
Yeah, it's Billy Burr as JFK.
Good.
But yeah, look, it looks to be a good old time. We'll probably give it a watch because it's coming out on Netflix, which involves very little effort from us.
Yeah, less effort than forgetting to go see Godzilla Cross Kong, which we did.
Oh, fuck.
Completely forgot, Ben. That came out this week. That's 2 weeks in a row where we, the hosts of a pop culture podcast, have forgot to watch the film of the week.
Hollywood, you're missing out. Send us your screener copies now and we'll watch it on we will spend, I tell you what, if you send us all your movies in advance, Hollywood, Mick and I will pool some of our resources and buy a second-hand projector and put it on a big white wall in Mick's house. So it'd be like going to the cinema, and we'll do our reviews of your films.
Oh, we could just go see it, Ben. Look, I don't even know if there were premieres for either this or Ghostbusters last week in Ireland. Usually we know.
No.
Usually we know at least, so that we get annoyed if they don't invite us, or we do go on the rare occasion. But this time, not a clue. Kind of completely forgot that it came out.
Just didn't even know. Now, Michael, the only clue I had that Ghostbusters was coming out was the fact that Channel 4 seems to be running every Ghostbusters movie ever on repeat.
There's only 4 though, and only one of them is good.
And I've now seen Ghostbusters 1.
Yeah, the good
Ghostbusters 2.
The not so good one.
I've seen Ghostbusters Ladies Bust Some Ghosts.
Yeah, the also not so good one.
Yeah, and then the other one where it's, oh, look, his granddaughter's here and we've completely created a CGI version of Harold Ramis, which feels very, very distasteful.
That's fine. His granddaughter said it was fine. Benjamin, speaking of serial killers, what in the heck is them?
So, Michael, we missed this when it first came out, but Them is an anthology horror series which has an African-American focus, or a black focus.
Oh, go on.
And season 1 is set around a black family that moves into a predominantly white neighborhood and is then essentially the target of a concentrated campaign to get them to leave the neighborhood.
Not great, Benjamin.
Because the white folks don't want them there.
We've seen that before in real life.
In history,
yeah.
Yes. In the history of America and many other places. But what's interesting about this, Michael, is that it begins in a very realistic, horrific setting of racism.
Oh, good. That's one of your favorite settings.
It progresses, exactly. It progresses forward and the supernatural begins to leak its way into the horror, augmenting it into this kind of supernatural hyper-reality, Michael, which apparently is my favourite word today.
Yeah, supernatural hyper-reality. Sounds a little bit like Lovecraft Country.
It's very Lovecraft Country, Michael, and it joins the esteemed company of the likes of Us and bloody...
Yeah, you and I, personally, you mean?
Yeah, Us,
yeah.
You and I.
Yeah.
Famously a horror genre focused on the African-American experience.
Yeah. Benjamin, why is this called Them? Is that a direct reference to Us?
No, Them is a reference to the fact that I don't like them as a general pejorative term for anyone who isn't a whitey.
Oh! In Ireland, we...
Them being other people.
Yeah, in Ireland, we do use that for white people, though. Just different white people.
Yeah, other white people, other white folks. But, Michael, this is an anthology horror series, so the second season of this, coming out from a gentleman called Little Marvin. He's the writer and director of these.
He's a tiny little fella.
He's only a wee man. He's actually quite big. He's quite buff.
Oh, it's one of those jokes, is it?
But come here to me, Michael.
Yes, go on.
It's one of those. It's an ironic nickname. But this one, Michael, is set in the 1980s in America around a black detective who is hunting down a black serial killer. And much the same as season 1, it begins with a very realistic, grounded take on the racism plaguing the black community within America. And then the supernatural only goes and leaks on in there, Michael, and begins to make it really fucked up.
Oh, gross. He's breaking people up into little bits and then squeezing them into cupboards.
Yeah, I mean, don't do that. Not great.
Benjamin, you know how you know it's the 90s? Because the 90s is starting to inherit a filter.
Yes, it has a very, very, very distinguished kind of green hue that they slap over anything from the 90s.
Yeah, so like just like the country of Mexico has a yellow filter over it naturally. The 90s now seems to have borrowed that filter and put a little bit of a browny green on it, and that's how you know something's in the 90s. Yeah. It's got a browny, greeny Mexican.
That's how you know, Michael.
That's how you bloody know. But they've also done one of your favourite things in this trailer, which is to take an upbeat and fun pop song and slow it down and make it spooky.
Yeah, Michael, it started with Us, and I've got 5 on it, and now it's just continued forevermore, Michael. It is the horror trope of the 21st century. Give me a jazzy pop beat, and let me make it haunt your dreams for the rest of your days.
Great stuff.
Yeah, terrible.
Benjamin, it gives Candyman vibes a little bit, but I guess that's because Candyman is also like an urban black horror.
I mean, Candyman is the definitive urban black horror at this point. It was kind of the first great modern black horror film, primarily from a black point of view. Or no, because it wasn't actually. Was it a white woman?
I think it was
in
a
the
white
original
woman in the
Candyman?
original Candyman. Yeah, the modern Candyman made it.
Never mind then. But what I will say, Michael, in response to that, it was the first one that sort of gave a realistic depiction of the black social experience in a horror film, and it wasn't just a bunch of stereotypes knocking around. Still some stereotypes.
Yeah.
Some stereotypes.
Ben, you can't tell a story without a stereotype.
It doesn't really work as much as we'd all love to, Michael.
I wouldn't.
Much as we'd all love to. You have to have some stereo. Isn't it interesting? Michael, have you been keeping up with this Disney shit? I meant to talk about this and I meant to put it on the running order, but because you bring up stereotypes, have you been keeping up with this fucking Disney shit?
Oh, Ben, I'm going to unironically ask you a question here. Which piece of Disney shit exactly do you mean?
The Nelson Peltz controversy, Michael.
Oh, the Nelson Peltz. Your mate Nelson Peltz. Yes, go on. Full
My
Nelson,
mate
as
Nelson
we call him.
Peltz. I got it right this time. His name is Nelson Peltz, Michael, and he has become an agent of Ike Perlmutter.
Yeah, or they're teaming up. It's hard to tell which one is Satan and which one is Beelzebub.
It's one of those ones where it's like a chorus of demons, but are all the demons just one demon?
Yeah.
Or, well, what's the deal? But yeah, so this is fucking fascinating, Michael. It's become a real, like, draft experience for Disney.
Go on.
So, there are various megacorps, Michael, or huge investment funds that are backing either one side or the other of this bizarrely contentious stakeholder meeting that's coming up for Disney.
Yeah. They're trying to oust or get in with Bob Iger or the other Bob.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just bizarre, Michael. We have people coming out of the woodwork because, frankly, Disney's golden run, if you want, has come to an end. It's not a surefire win anymore. It used to be Disney makes a movie, everybody watches it, the end.
Well, it's always been ups and downs.
Yeah, all right.
The last few years,
movies, Michael.
The last few years.
Yeah, the last few years have been particularly tough under Eisner's. It is Eisner, isn't it? I'm not wrong. Yes.
Yeah.
Under Eisner's stewardship, but he is the man who brought in Marvel, and at one point, that is essentially the man who brought in the Golden Goose. But we've seen a decline over the last couple of years in what I would argue is just the quality of the writing and production that's gone into these.
Yeah, it's Bob Iger, not Bob Eisner.
So close.
If that's who you mean. I don't really know. But it seems to be him and Nelson Peltz who are fighting. But I don't think that...
Yeah.
Like, yes, Disney's writing staff has gone fucking mental. And I don't think it's Disney. I think it's America. I think America is now a cesspool of poor storytelling. And more we're starting to see better stuff is coming from other countries. And eventually that'll swing back. But America it's eaten its own tail of its identity. And Americans now can't tell a story that isn't about modern day America. Now, that's actually a fair point. Massive sweeping statement. But it's solid. It does seem to be, the thing is that the only story Americans can tell is a story about modern day America. Whether that's like the film Damsel, which ostensibly is a like medieval European action fantasy movie, but it's still about modern America. Everything's about modern America. It's just America. Yeah, it's just modern America. But I don't know if necessarily that is connected to the fuckery that's happening with billionaires being arseholes. I think these might be two separate things that are both bad. Yeah, it's weird. It's such an odd... It seems to be such a dick measuring competition at a high corporate level, and I find it fucking fascinating because your man Nelson Peltz has nothing to do with movie making. None of them do. Nothing to do with it. None of them do. None of these CEO executives do. They're just billionaire fucking lunatics. My mate and yours, Dakota Johnson, said the other day, best pals with Dakota Johnson. She said that she reckons that all of these executives think audiences are idiots.
Yeah, no, they do. That's a fact.
That's just what's going on. That's why Sony keeps making these fucking spum movies. That's why.
Oh, they're
just so bad. They're just so awful. And it's infecting into Marvel as well. And I reckon it's just good luck that Marvel had such a good run for 10 years.
Yeah, they really hit on it somewhere.
They did. And not every Marvel movie was an absolute fucking stunner. But, and in the same way, not every one of them now is an absolute debacle either. But, yeah, the writing is atrocious. And when the writing is atrocious, then the money stops coming in. And when the money stops coming in, the billionaires start fighting. And I don't fucking care. Put them in a pit and let them just fight. That's what I reckon.
Yeah.
And
I'd watch that. Michael,
what?
Speaking of billionaire... Oh, sorry, keep going. No, you keep going.
I have to say.
No, I'm a terrible man.
No, put the billionaires in the fighting pit. That's all I'm saying. Put them in it.
Speaking of billionaires and fighting pits, Michael, you finished the 3-body problem. And you have something to share with me.
Benjamin, look, our good friend, mine and yours, Sean, sent us something absolutely mental. This is not funny, this is tragic, but it's just so weird that we have to mention it before we talk about 3-body. So, one of the executive... Benjamin, this is from The Wrap. So, that's legit source, isn't it? And they're probably quoting from someone else and they're quoting from someone else. But apparently... what has happened in the history of the 3-body problem is that a Chinese billionaire was trying to get it made.
Yeah, okay.
And he's like executive producer or whatever. And he brought on a guy he knew to be like the CEO of the company who was going to adapt 3-body. But it wasn't going well. And so he demoted him and cut his salary and brought on other executives and creatives.
Okay.
Normal Hollywood bullshit, but in China.
Classic.
Exactly. But here's where it gets all a bit 3-body, Ben.
Okay.
The guy who got demoted said, I'm not fucking having that. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to tell anyone, and I'm going to set up a fake shell company that buys and sells chemicals.
Ooh.
And I'm going to use that fake shell company to buy a lot of chemicals, and I'm going to poison the fuck out of everyone involved in demoting me.
What?
Which is what he then promptly did.
Fuck off.
He poisoned them, Ben. He poisoned the 3 members of the board who had hired him. And
Michael, that's the plot of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
It's absolutely insane supervillain nonsense that happened in real life about the adaptation of a science fiction classic.
A shell company, Michael.
And Benjamin, he poisoned them. He got caught, essentially. And the doctors were just tell us what was in the poison, and then we can help them, and then you'll be in less trouble. And he was like, yeah, nah.
Fucking talk about going down with the ship, man. Talk about that's fucking awful person, obviously, right? Awful person.
Not great. But
great. Also, the brass fucking Taz on that man, huh?
It's so like something from 3-body problem that it's almost hard to separate it from the fictional universe. Like, that's the kind of thing that happens in those books.
Yeah, very strange, man.
Anyway,
very
Benjamin,
strange.
That all happened in China, and because China's one of the great terrible countries, he's been sentenced to death.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because they still do that in most of the bad countries.
I suppose you'd call that a 1-body problem for China, Michael.
Yeah. That guy.
Yeah,
anyway,
that guy.
Anyway, weird behind-the-scenes shenanigans
fucking
aside.
bizarre.
Absolutely mad, Benjamin. I have watched all of 3-body problem, all 8 episodes of the Netflix adaptation of the book The 3-body Problem. Is it called that? I don't know. But
I love Netflix Nearies with lots of episodes.
Netflix Nearies, not the Nepisodes. I've lost the ability to talk of Benjamin because I'm so excited about 3-body. And let me tell you, Ben, as you know, I had my reservations.
Yeah.
I was a bit worried. I thought they'd taken too many liberties. And I was going, who's this character? Why have they introduced this absolute wet sop? Who's this other character? Why do they keep bringing people in? But in the end, it all did pay off quite nicely.
Oh, was it tidy, Michael, at the end?
It was quite tidy and quite good. So I can say this without spoiling it, because if you've read the books, then it's not going to matter. And if you haven't read the book, then this isn't going to really spoil anything. But what they've done, Benjamin, is they've taken the protagonists of all three in the book series and started their stories from the same point. So that's why there seem to be so many superfluous characters around. Because as you watched further in, you go, hold on a minute, this guy is the character from the third book.
What's he doing in this?
What's he doing in this? And then you go, oh, this is what he's doing. Okay, they've tied it all together to make, let's say, the 6 most important people in human history all happen to be a bunch of sexy mates. Now, I know I said that last week, but it does really become apparent in the watching the entirety of it, and very much enjoying the entirety of it, Ben. It's very good.
Oh, well, that's good. That's nice to hear,
It
Michael.
gets a strong recommend. Now, we can't really talk about it anymore without going into spoilers. Are you ready for spoilers?
Okay. Right, ladies and gentlemen, brace. Brace.
Yeah.
Brace.
Yes. Spoilers ahead. 3-body problem.
Spoilers now. What's that? Pip. The old Jerry's are at it again. Spoilers?
Yes.
Oh, man the hatches.
Yep. I'm going to be very upset, Benjamin, if I have to do a load of editing on your loud spikes. I really am. I'm going to come for you. I'm going to come down and find you, and I'm going to extract your victuals.
That's very threatening.
Yeah. No, I'm intending to be threatening again. Like the Sophons in 3-body problem. Ben. So,
Michael, if you get done for poisoning me later on, they'll use this as evidence in court.
They will. And the poison that they find in my house. Ben, it introduces one of our favourite things of all time.
Go on.
It has one of the best Irishman's sauce we've ever seen.
Fuck yes.
So Liam,
get in.
Your mate and mine, Benjamin, Liam Cunningham, plays the character of Thomas Wade. And Thomas Wade in the books is an American fella. But in this, he's a Dubliner. And he's a proud Dubliner.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
He's a proud Dubliner, Ben. He's a proud Dubliner, and you're going to have to pardon my language on this, because this is going to un-PG this whole episode. He's such a proud Dubliner that when he gets to command a unit of the Royal Navy, he calls them boat cunts. It's one of the... Go on.
I'm ending this podcast right here, and I'm going to watch that right now.
It's absolutely gas, and he just completely berates them and makes fun of them for having to take orders from a Dubliner in civvies. So nice. You know, if you're a fan of the books, he might not be as good an egg as you think he is initially, because he might be a bit more sinister and self-serving than, or maybe just an absolute lunatic, an absolute driven lunatic. But great character, very entertaining. And there's 2 other things I want to briefly mention because they're spectacular. One of the things in it, and if you've enjoyed the series and the books, you'll know the Sophons are protons, a single proton, Ben, a single particle, unfolded into 2 dimensions.
Oh no!
At which point they become massive, and then they have a supercomputer engraved on their surface, and then they fold back down into a single proton. And they're a big part of the show. And it's a really cool concept. And in the books, there are some really cool scenes where protons unfold into their full 2-dimensional size, and it's terrifying. But the show does it spectacularly.
Well, that's cool. That sounds awful, and it might give me a complex.
Oh, it's terrible, Benjamin. Big eyes are appearing in the sky looking at everyone, and everyone's like, oh, what's that, big eyes?
Yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah. And then the other really amazing scene is a very famous scene from the books where the Judgment Day, the ship that the baddies are on, Ben, the cult. So there's thousands of people living on this ship, and they're people in communication with the aliens. And they're the people who want the aliens to come down and sort us all out.
Oh, no.
There's families on the ship, and there's kids, and there's classrooms and schools, and people have their pets. And I Isa Gonzalez, your favourite actress, Isa Gonzalez, her character Augie has created these monomolecular nanofibers that can cut through anything, Ben. And and they set up a trap, which is maybe 50 of these fibers spread out across the Panama Canal. And
That's
the ship,
big.
Yeah. And the ship drives through them. But because they're so thin, Ben, they can slice through anything with no resistance.
Oh, it's just a filament of death.
Exactly. 50 filaments of death, inches apart. And do they get into it? Holy moly.
You get to see quite a bit of dissection, do you?
Oh, dissection maybe isn't the right word. But, it's gross. It's gross and horrible. Now, you don't see any kids specifically being sliced up.
Oh, no.
But you do see the aftermath. And, it's grim and horrible.
Just OXO cubes as far as the eye can see.
No, it's not like they don't go Resident Evil like a grid. They're just lines. So it's just straight across. So you just get kind of layers.
Slices.
Yeah, you get sliced.
Yeah. Billy rolled children.
Yeah, very unpleasant. Very, very unpleasant. Very gross and horrible. But very good series. Very excited for 2 and 3 because, and I've said this a few times now, if you're a book fan, not a fan of books in general, but these books, it gets pretty sci-fi pretty quickly from here on out. And it's very exciting to see where it goes. So hop up on Netflix, Ben, give it a watch and rate it, just to make sure it gets made.
I'll give it a whirl. Mainly for boat cunts.
Yeah.
I won't lie.
Benjamin, there's one scene where they have to come up with something mean to say with Augustina Salazar, Isa Gonzalez's character, and they say, "You're beautiful," but in a boring way. Like, you'd be a movie star and you would play the bad girl in Speed 3. It's like, that's literally Isa Gonzalez's career. Why are you taking a pot shot at Isa Gonzalez? And also, you're beautiful like a movie star is not really an insult, let's be honest.
No, it's not. It's a very poor insult.
One of the worst
insults. You're
insults.
boringly beautiful. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh.
Someone should have said, you smell like piss, Augie.
That would have been solid. That would have been insulting.
Yeah, much worse.
Yes. Much worse.
Anyway, that's all I have to say about the
Much
Three Probably
worse.
Problem. It's great. And some scenes that I didn't want to talk about last week because it was too close to spoilers. But they've really done those scenes justice. It's great. Fabulous. Get more. Get on it.
Fabulous stuff, Michael. Fabulous. Speaking of consistently excellent series that we've been watching, Michael.
Benjamin, I am obsessed with X-Men 97. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. It's all I think about from morning to night is X-Men 97.
I know.
And you know what, Ben? Because we've been doing this podcast so long and because I've been into nerd stuff so long, I've kind of forgotten X-Men, the original X-Men animated series is why I'm a nerd.
Yes, it was probably quite formative.
Absolutely formative. I didn't grow up in a nerd household. You know, like some houses where like the kids are introduced to board games and video games and stuff at a very young age by their nerd parents.
I think that only happens now, Michael.
No, it doesn't. It definitely happened back then as well because there were D&D dads in the 70s and 80s. We didn't have them. And they were probably not very common in Ireland. But I 100% didn't. I inducted myself into the world of nerddom. And this cartoon was probably 90% of the reason. And Ben, I got emotional watching this episode.
Mad.
It's the music started playing. I was sitting there with my good lady wife, as she now is, going,
yeah, she is. She's your good lady wife.
Good lady wife, Benjamin. And I says to her, this is just the best thing that's ever happened.
It's so interesting, Michael. Now, I have done a little bit of digging for this week's podcast, Michael, because we're going to be covering who Madelyne Pryor is after this.
Oh, yeah, go on.
And I remember one of my first criticisms of this episode in my brain, few as they are, one or two of them was, Jesus, they're fitting a lot in here. They're fitting a lot in here.
They are.
Yeah.
Go on.
And Scott Summers is very callous. And then I read some of the issues that go with this and I went, oh no, That's a very accurate portrayal of this comic book.
Yeah, yeah. Scott Scummers, as you call them. So, my first instinct, Ben, watching this and going, oh, this fucking Scott Scummers guy. It's funny that the internet has turned back against Scott Scummers so quickly because he was the internet.
One episode.
Yeah, he was the internet's absolute hero for 2 weeks. And then everyone saw the episode and went, that's why we didn't like him. I fucking knew there was a reason we didn't like him, and I knew it was pre-James Marsden, and it's that he's a prick with women. That's what it was. I knew there was something. But, Ben, I thought that they did a lot in this episode. They absolutely
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. But, and bear with me for a second, because I was thinking about this. First of all, these are like 35, 36-minute episodes, as opposed to legitimate 90s cartoons, which would probably be 18 or 19 minutes of content. So, this is nearly... If this was in the 90s, it would have been a two-parter.
Oh, absolutely.
They would have padded it out with a little bit more side story or something, but it would have been a two-parter. So I don't mind it from that perspective, that it is wrapped up in... Because that's the greatest criticism I've heard of this, that they wrap up the Inferno storyline, which was a 10-issue crossover, in a single episode. But also, even though this X-Men 90s cartoon kind of introduced serialized storytelling with, let's say, the Phoenix Saga or the Dark Phoenix Saga, introduced serialized storytelling to Western animated cartoons, not introduced serialized storytelling. Let's say Days of Future Past, an iconic X-Men storyline. That got 2 episodes. That probably got like 29, 30 minutes of screen time. So, you know, it's... Yeah. Considering this to be a spiritual successor, not a spiritual successor, excuse me, an actual successor. This is just season 6 of that original show. And I think that's right, because the original show hit the big storylines for an episode or 2 and then moved on. And to now introduce season-long storytelling. Look, I'm sure a lot of people were hoping we would get this Madelyne Pryor storyline spread out over the rest of the season. But I don't think that would be true to the spirit of the original cartoon, and I'm actually happier with how they did this. Even if it meant having to make a couple of wonky decisions.
The wonky decisions work, though. I think one of the things this show does so well, Michael, is it straddles the wonkiness of the original cartoon, but it also elevates it just so that you're watching something that's infinitely better but maintains that spirit of nostalgia.
Fucking exactly. And straddles, Benjamin, you couldn't have picked a better word, because everything about this is randy as shit.
Well, it's Chris Claremont. You can't spread Chris Claremont without BDSM, Michael. You absolutely can. You absolutely can. Yeah, you absolutely can. But
go on.
Well, we do get this, Michael. We do get this episode, and it is a condensed version of the Inferno arc from Chris Claremont and Paul Smith in the 1980s. I think 87 to 88 was when that originally emerged. It kind of, sort of, a little bit, maybe. One of the tricky things about Madelyne Pryor is she is, alongside being the Goblin Queen, Michael, she is the queen of the retcon.
Look, we're going to get into it big style, but in a sense, they avoid that issue here in this episode.
They do. They do. They make it pretty smooth from start to finish, not a bother on it. But one of the things that I found most entertaining about this, Michael, is that the unbelievable heel turn from every last one of the X-Men, from the second that Beast, and spoilers for the episode here, ladies and gentlemen, utters, "You're the clone, Gene."
Yeah, it's so funny. He's like, "You're the clone," and everyone's like, "All right, get her the fuck out of here. Get her out of here. We want rid of her."
Like, Scott Summers is holding the baby that he legitimately had with this woman.
That's her baby.
And he's
doesn't
just
matter who's the clone.
It's her baby.
And he's like, he goes, "I'm not going to abandon this Gene. I'm not going to abandon this baby like my father abandoned me. Oh, you're the clone. Fuck this. I'm out." And he's gone.
That's such a... Scott Scummers. Scott Scummers, ladies and gentlemen. He's an absolute dick, without shadow of a doubt. So they immediately heel turn on her. They leave her. They let her walk out of the room with the child.
It's her child.
It's her child, but also...
It is her child, Ben.
She clearly has a very negative emotional reaction to the fact of being shunned by everyone she considers to be family. Some would say justified negative emotional reaction.
Yeah. You can't take a woman's baby off her just because you're being mean to her and she doesn't like it.
But anyway, so my favourite bit about this... Michael, is that Scott Summers is like Gene to the unconscious woman who's just on a bed from that point on because he's the worst.
He gets to say Gene a lot in this episode, which is one of my absolute favourite Scott Summers characteristics.
There's so many great things that happen here, Michael. One of my favourite things is that Wolverine sees his chance immediately, and he's just like, well, if Genie's on the table unconscious, Genie, read my mind. And I'm just like...
One Gene for everyone. I'll have this one. Scummers, you have that one. We're fine now.
It is the Wolverine.
This is what we've always wanted. And then both Genes wake up and go, no, we both prefer Scott, actually.
That's the worst bit.
And then Wolverine just has a complete berserker rage. And Morph has to wank him off to calm him down. It's so randy. This is so randy, this episode. It's fucking insanity. I was watching this with my good lady wife, Ben, and she said, this is not for children.
No, it is fucking not. Oh, Michael, that's the most I've ever laughed on this podcast.
Yeah,
fucking
absolute
great.
insanity.
So we have this bizarre thing where Wolverine just sees the sexy equivalent of dollar signs in his eyes, and it's two Genes.
Yeah.
They roll them.
Two Genes. Yeah. Ting, 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 ting. Just two redheads. Fucking God. What an absolute opportunist. Fair play to him, Ben. He was
ruthless.
Fucking rude. Scott Summers leaves the room in a strop and he's like, fucking here I go. Now's my chance. Read my mind. Feel how I feel about you.
And the worst part for him is she's like, is that really how you feel? And he's like, more. And then she's still like, oh wait, Scott's had a bit of a knock. I'm gonna go deal with that. And so that's the first fantastic bit about this. My second favourite bit about this, and more spoilers here, ladies and gentlemen, is the continuation of Rogue is boning the shit out of Magneto.
Yeah, and Gambit is freaked out by it.
Sure you would be. But come here to me. Rogue and Magneto, there's a weird bit where Morph is going through the training schedule for the Danger Room. And it starts off kind of funny where we see that Rogue and Magneto have the room booked from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. and or 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and you're like, all right, fair enough. Yeah, grand. Then there's another one from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. But then he just starts hitting it on repeat. It's just all booked up. The two of them are randy, Michael. It's awful.
Everyone's so randy. I have a feeling they're going to pull a twist on us there, and it's going to be that he's helping her control her powers or something so that she can be with Gambit.
That'll upset me massively.
Yeah. Good.
I'm Team Magneto Rogue. I'm all for it.
Team randy melty people.
I tell you, one of the phenomenal things they did here, Michael, and again, probably proof that it's not for children, is, Jesus, that nightmare sequence that Madelyne unleashes, or Jean Grey in this case, that Jean Grey unleashes on them, is unreal.
Great animation, great character designs, great hell attack on the mansion.
David Cronenberg-esque, like Magneto and Rogue melded together. There's fucking horrific Charlie Xavier moment where he's this bizarre kind of Studio Ghibli caricature creature. And it's
horrible, scary.
And he's he's go on.
No, you go on.
I was just going to say, one of the awful things he's doing is he's listing off demerits about Scott's failures as a man as opposed to a student. Where he's like, couldn't have a baby with the right wife, Scott.
You are banging the wrong gene, Scott. There's a reason we all call you Scott Scummers when you're not around.
But there's some phenomenal stuff happening there. Go on, keep going there. You had something to say. Sorry, I cut you off.
One of the interesting things that happens is in the comic books, and we're going to get into this in a few minutes, but Madelyne actually does make a pact with devils and demons. So in this, they've gone down the route of this is just how she's decided to use her psychic powers. Mm-hmm. But in the comic books, it isn't. She actually does make a demonic pact, possibly kind of semi-inspired by the fact that this incident in the comic happens because of Mastermind, Jason Wingard.
Yes.
The X-Men, what are they called? The
Brotherhood of Mutants.
No, not the Brotherhood of Mutants. The fetish people. Chris Claremont.
Hellfire Club.
The Hellfire Club. That it's him. He's responsible for this attack in the comic books. He's the character who, in modern comics, would be called the Gaslighter, but in the 70s and 80s, he was called Mastermind.
Yes.
So it makes a lot of sense that she's the Goblin Queen because she's the literal queen of literal goblins in that. But in this, it's a little bit weird that that's what you're going with. You're going with the Goblin Queen, not the Dark Phoenix or True Jean or like where did you get that from?
Not greatly explained.
No.
To us. One of the other things that I really enjoyed about this is the whole sequence in Hell where the X-Men are using the powers, because we get another magnificent display of mutant powers in the form of Bishop and Cyclops working together, where Bishop is like, load me up, and Scott just blasts him with kinetic energy to the point that he just becomes an absolute hellion of a being and wipes out.
I would argue that Scott could have just done that.
Yeah, that was my first thought as well. And I was like, let Bishop have his moment.
Yeah, throw him a bone.
The other interesting thing about this, Michael, is it is all happening in their minds to some degree.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, did Bishop just wreck the mansion?
Yeah, there's a little bit of inconsistency on that. I guess that it is just literally all happening in their minds, as in none of this happens at all. They're all just standing there, stock still, and nothing is happening.
Yeah, one of my favourite things about this, though, is that it plays so well with the camp nature of the original show.
Go on.
While simultaneously delivering some solid stuff. Mr. Sinister and his introduction might be the best example of that I've seen in recent memory, where Hank McCoy mentions a character that we all know, that all the X-Men know, because they've dealt with him before.
Yeah.
And he says, the only word to describe him is Sinister.
Yeah, and then he goes like, it's me, I'm Mr. Sinister. Benjamin, we were talking before the podcast, and I have a Mr. Sinister action figure here. And what we discovered was that the Mr. Sinister action figure and you, Benjamin Colopy, have exactly the same head shape.
We do.
You do?
We do. We're chiseled.
Exactly the
chiseled
same.
Out of each other.
Chiseled from the same cloth. So we've picked a Comic-Con costume for your next one. The only problem is you're going to have to get ripped as shit. Look at the size of this guy.
I'm going to have to get some roids.
Get some roids, Benjamin. I know a guy. It's Joe Rogan, but we'll figure that out for you. Ben.
I'll just send him an email.
You'll send him an email. The best part about this whole episode, though, is Goblin Queen Madelyne, or not Madelyne Pryor, because she's not Madelyne Pryor until the end. Goblin Queen Jean Grey. Absolutely.
Goblin Queen.
The randiest thing that has ever happened in children's cartoons.
Oh, fucking hell, Michael. Even, I didn't think they'd go through with it. I thought they might include some kind of modesty Under Armour or a Sinister-esque kind of cabled ribbing thing. No. It's full BDSM where Chris Claremont was somewhere going, yeah,
we've done it, boys. The funny thing is, though, it's not her comic costume. Her comic costume is much, much skimpier even than that. And they've gone for
very randy.
They've gone for a randy kind of it's a Hellfire Club-esque costume. Yeah. So, Benjamin, as I said, I was watching this with my wife, my lovely wife. And we watched that transformation sequence. And she said, and I said to her, Are you the original you? Or are you going to turn out to be an evil, mind-controlled, sexy dominatrix? And she said to me, and this was the funniest thing that happened to me through this whole episode, she said to me, you are the only fucker alive who, if I did transform into an evil dominatrix and everyone was saying, quick, we have to stop her, you would say, no, hold on a minute. Let's see how this pans out for a second.
Wait, let's not be too hasty
here. This could be fine. This could be fine for everyone.
She's still under Sinister's control, guys.
Yeah.
She's still under Sinister's control.
We could be fine with this. Let's not do anything too hasty. But
yeah, I mean, look, we could argue that Scott Summers should have been pulling that line from the beginning of this episode, where he's like, "Well, I did have a baby with this woman."
Yeah, and she's not even evil yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and that probably would have saved us a lot of time and effort, Michael.
Benjamin.
But
She even has a Sharon Stone uncrossing her legs moment on a throne.
she does. It's very strange.
Very randiest thing I've ever seen.
She puts Scott Summers below her, and they do what is essentially an upskirt shot at one point, Michael, of Madelyne Pryor just standing over him. And I was like, fucking hell, lads. I've heard of fan service, but this is fucking service with a smile. This is something else.
Anyway, they end up unsnapping her mind. They have a great fight scene, first of all.
Yeah, phenomenal stuff. Phenomenal stuff. I love the way she humbles Magneto, where he's like, your metal thing is cute, but I can do it with fucking everything.
Yeah.
And then, like, not a bother.
Yeah. I think there's an argument to be made that later versions of Magneto can do glass because it, like, has aluminium or something in it. But
there's filaments in there.
Magneto just keeps getting more and more powerful all the time. Also, a great little cameo getting to do another character connected with Limbo by having Morph do one of his cameos of the week and turning into what's her name? Magic. Yeah, Ilyana Rasputin.
Ilyana Rasputin. Colossus's little sister.
And then she gets mind controlled by sexy Jean Grey into the Dark Child version, who's like the sexy evil version of her.
Yeah, she looks like Cassandra Xavier for a second, and you're like, no,
not into this.
Oh, very uncomfortable.
So far, but not now.
This.
So anyway, they convince her to turn back, and they get everything sorted, and everyone's grand. And then she goes, right, I'm off. Just call me Madelyne now. I'm off. And no one goes, why though?
Jean tries to. She's like, you can stay. It's your home. It's fine. She's like, no. I wanted to leave for a while. It's like, yes, but you wanted to leave with your soon-to-be husband and child to start a new life. These are not equivalent.
Yeah. Well, I kind of don't care about that because that was in the... They do the mind share thing where our Jean, original Jean, now has all those memories anyway. So if we don't want to, we never have to mention this again because she remembers everything that happened from both perspectives. So, but at the same time, the inexplicable decision to just call herself Madelyne Pryor is gas. So
I was doing some digging on this, Michael. It turns out that the whole Madelyne Pryor thing is bizarre.
Mental.
It's a weird name to pluck out of the sky, right? It's very specific, and the reason for that is that Chris Claremont, when he was writing this, he's created two characters in the X-Men universe. For anyone who doesn't know, Chris Claremont is essentially the Mac Daddy of modern X-Men characterization. He kind of
modern, Ben. It was the 80s. That was 40 years ago.
I know, but it could be argued today that Chris Claremont's work on it has gone on to be some of the most defining stuff that we still see today, probably more now than ever with the return of X-Men 97.
Can I cut across you for the second there to just talk about that for a second? You remember what you're going to say about Madelyne Pryor.
Yeah.
Isn't it gas, though, right? This cartoon, the original cartoon, the characterizations of these characters, the events that happened, okay, the suits, the look of the characters were based on the Jim Lee comics from the early 90s. But
they were,
all of the big hits from it, Days of Future Past, for example, Inferno, although Inferno's only done recently, Cable, all of those stories, at the time that cartoon came out, those stories were between, say, 12 and 6, 7 and 12 years old. Like, this is something that's always fascinated me because we talk about this all the time on this podcast, that when you're making your comic book adaptations, go with the stories that people love and have survived the test of time. But absolutely, but this show was full of stuff that had only happened 7, 8, 9, 10 years before in the comics. That's like if they...
Not a classic.
That's like if they... The only equivalent that... And it's a very, very apt equivalent with almost exactly the same gap between publishing and the animated series coming out is Invincible.
Yeah.
And I think what that proves is that's the way to do it for comic book cartoon adaptations. So if you were making a modern X-Men series from scratch, you would be pulling from the last 15 years of comics. I couldn't tell you anything big that's happened in the last 15 years of X-Men? The Krakoa storyline?
Well, I mean, yeah, House of X is pretty huge.
Is it?
Isn't it?
Could you
Age of X?
Could you do a new animated series about that?
I think you could do a mental animated series about it, but I don't think it'd appeal to a lot of people. The issue you have with modern comics,
right?
And
go on.
I'm reticent to make that a phrase anyway, because it opens up to a bunch of people leaving comments under our shorts like diversity and stuff like that. But the issue with modern comics is the sheer weight of lore that is built up around the likes of the X-Men at this point.
Right. So, exactly. And that leads on to, hopefully, back to your point now in a roundabout way. Because when this storyline, when the Madelyne Pryor storyline happened, it was 1983. Right?
Yes.
The X-Men had been around for about 18 years. That is less time than the year 2000 to now, Ben, by 6 years.
Yep.
The X-Men had been around about 18 years. And Scott Skummer's Cyclops had grown from the teenage leader of the X-Men into an adult man who was the leader of the team and whose wife had died tragically. Now, maybe she didn't die, maybe Retcon City, Phoenix is going to come back, or she never was Jean, or whatever the fuck. But in 1983, Jean had died. And Scott was conceivably in his, like, allowing for comic timey-wimey weirdness. Scott was conceivably in his late 20s, early 30s, maybe. Yeah. And new X-Men were being introduced. You had Kitty Pryde coming in, and she was a teenager coming into this world of adults. And Jean had died, and Scott retired.
He did.
He retired. And Chris Claremont said
he had the correct emotional reaction to
He's like, okay, I've done enough. There's a new generation coming up. I've had my share of traumas and excitement. I'm going to go off and I'm going to bang anyone. And, you know, I'll be in touch. If you need me, I'll be there. Anyone can just send up the X signal and I'll come back and I'll do a big crossover. And this is all based on Chris Claremont interviews. So Chris Claremont, as much as you can trust Chris Claremont, Benjamin, because while he's talking to you, he's probably thinking about kinky situations.
He's picturing you in latex thigh highs.
Yeah, exactly. Me personally.
You personally.
But while Chris Claremont said that was the idea, Scott's going to be the first to retire, and the others will gradually phase out and be replaced by new up-and-coming mutants. And the X-Men was only 18 years old at this stage. That was a very realistic and, I think, clever thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So off Scott pops. He goes off and he retires.
He does.
Yeah, that's it.
I have the exact quote here. He says, Scott was going to move on. Jean was dead. Get on with your life. Yeah. It was close to a happy ending. They lived happily ever after, and it was done to create the impression that maybe if you came back in 10 years, other X-Men would have grown up and out too. Would Kitty stay with the team forever? Would Nightcrawler? Would any of them? Because the way we could evolve them in new directions. We could bring new characters in, and there would be an ongoing sense of renewal and growth and change in a positive sense, said Chris Claremont.
Fabulous. So they set him up with a girlfriend who looked exactly like Jean.
Yeah.
And he goes, Madelyne Pryor. That's why she has a totally different name.
That's it. She's a different person.
She's a totally different person with a totally different name. And then it gets confusing, weird Chris Claremont shit. And it turns out that she was in a massive plane crash and lost all of her memories from before the day Jean Grey died.
Yeah, classic.
So the whole point is we're supposed to be thinking, is she Jean Grey? And the whole point is Scott's thinking, is she Jean Grey?
Yeah, it's a classic. Before we called Mastermind Mr. Gaslight, people called Chris Claremont Mr. Gaslight around the office.
Yeah. So Madelyne is just Scott's dream woman. She's Jean without the baggage.
Yes.
She's she's living a normal life with Jean. She's going off and getting married to your favourite sexy redhead and having a little baby, and everything is grand. And there's no mutants.
None of the emotional bit.
Yeah, there's no mutants, there's no Mr. Sinister, there's no apocalypse. Everything is fabulous.
Yeah, it's
Now,
fab.
then Gaslighter shows up and goes, no, she is Jean Grey, and she's the Dark Phoenix, and she's back. And everyone's like, oh shit, we better beat her up so. And
we should probably give her a thrashing.
just give her an old thrashing. And Chris Claremont was like, oh, maybe I'll give her a little thrashing. Maybe it'll tie her up a little bit first and then give her a little thrashing. And the other lads were
Bloody
like,
fucking hell. Just
Chris, I'm not drawing that, please. That's... So they do that, and they very briefly think she is Jean Grey reincarnated as the Dark Phoenix, and she's back. But it turns out it's just the Gaslighter, and he's just being a prick. And then they beat him up instead. And off they go and get married and have a baby.
Yep, the end. And then Madelyne Pryor is so complex. So what happens then is the editors of the comic at the time, according to Chris Claremont, so can't trust him. He's picturing you in kinky boots.
Yeah, Chris Claremont being interviewed in heavy bondage.
Yeah, he said the original Madelyne storyline was...
No, Ben. He said...
It's the best joke we've ever done in this podcast.
I'm pretty proud of that joke. Oh, I shouldn't laugh at my own jokes that much, but that was good. I took Chris Claremont down the peg.
That was a good one. Between that and Wolverine this week, Michael. Two fucking...
Oh, we've nailed them. We've fucking nailed them.
But Chris Claremont said the original Madelyne storyline was super simple. She was that 1 in a million shot that happened to look like Jean Grey, and that's a direct quote. Yep. And the relationship was summed up by the moment when Scott says, "Are you Jean?" and she punches him. So that was in X-Men 174, and it was really, really simple because she was a full human being in her own right, and being compared to another woman constantly throughout a relationship was a load of bollocks that she wasn't going to stand for.
Yeah, so she gave him a punch, and they got married, and they went off and had big babies.
And Chris Claremont went on to say that a huge influence on that storyline is the likes of Alfred Hitchcock, because in movies like Vertigo, there is a male protagonist who has lost their love and then kind of projects it onto another woman and goes mad as a result. So Scott is going through this kind of Hitchcockian process of, Jean? Yeah. Jean, is it you?
And then the Gaslighter just takes the opportunity and goes, yeah, it is. Ha ha. I don't know how he talks. It's probably like that because he's a big prick. But Ben, then the higher up said, this X-Men stuff, look, we're not sure we like where it's going. You've got these Wolverines and these Psylocks, and you've got these Rogues, and they're in the Australian outback, and all this other mad shit's going. What we're going to do is we're going to bring back the original team. We're going to relaunch the original X-Men with Angel, Beast, Iceman, Cyclops, and Jean Grey, and we're going to call it X Factor, and we're going to give them new costumes, and they're going to have original adventures, because it's been nearly 20 years since X-Men was invented, so people are chomping at the bit for more X-Men, original X-Men. You know who wasn't chomping at the bit for it though?
Go on.
Scott's wife and child.
Scott's wife and child, those old balls and chains. Oh, what a complication.
What an so look, there's two ways you have to look at this. You have to look at this from the meta perspective, and you have to look at this from the in-character from this perspective. The in-character perspective, Scott Summers is an irredeemable arsehole.
Oh, he's a fucking prick.
He goes, my original girlfriend is alive after all. See ya! And off he fucking trots to join back up with his original friends.
And ladies and gentlemen, there's no such hint as there is in the cartoon where he's like, I won't abandon my son. In this, he's like, I'm out.
I'm out. I'm gone.
Deal with him.
I'm going to go do X Factor now. I'm not X-Men anymore. I'm X Factor now. And Madelyne's like, that's not cool, Scott. Your brother's kind of sexy. What do you think of this?
There's a whole thing where the only man who's known it right from the get-go, Michael, if there's one man who understands that Scott Summers is actually Scott Summers, it's his brother Alex, who's always been like, you're a bit of a prick, Scott. You really are.
Stop being such a prick. So anyway, Madelyne is left in Australia, she's the X-Men secretary, essentially.
It's fucking bizarre.
And she's in Australia, and she's going like, I can't believe he left me. He's just fucking gone. He's gone off to do something. I don't know where he is. Me and little Nathan here, this is crap. And then, Ben, she sees the prick on television with his ex-girlfriend, and she just goes evil.
Yeah, so what she does is she goes absolutely mad and she punches the screen that she sees Jean Grey on.
Yeah.
And then she's so overcome with emotion that she collapses.
Yeah. And she has the worst fucking nightmare sequence that Chris Claremont could ever think up. Because one thing he likes is latex leggings. Another thing he likes is people getting tied up. But one thing Chris Claremont is mad into is people having their faces removed so they can't scream.
Yes. I have no mouth, but I must scream.
Yeah.
He's very, very driven by that. That and Little Ugly Bugly's pinning people down, usually women.
Yeah. So there's a horrific nightmare sequence where Madelyne is in the desert and she sees Scott. And then there's like a sexy, naked woman with no face.
Yep.
And Scott comes over and he goes, yoink, you won't be needing this. And he takes her hair off and puts it on this figure. And then he takes her lips and puts them, and her nose and her eyes, and puts them all on this other figure. And then that's Jean.
Yeah.
And then she has no face left. And she would scream, but she has no mouth.
Exactly. It's mildly hinted at in the episode. There's an episode where the clone Jean is going through real Jean's memories, and there's a blank woman participating in all the things. So it's mildly hinted at in that episode of X-Men 97. But it's horrific, Michael. And then the demon Sim, or Siyim, I don't know how to say it, makes an appearance, and he's like, oh, they're real bastards up there. That's a real scumbag of an ex you have there. How about I give you a little bit of fucking zhuzh-vavavoom,
a little bit of demon powers.
And you take care of that. And it's a real-on demon, and the real-on demon has been waiting for an opportunity to give the X-Men a good thrashing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the kickoff of the Goblin Queen arc for Madelyne Pryor.
Absolute fucking insanity. Then your mate, Mr. Sinister, shows up, and he's like, hey, guess what? Guess what? You are a fucking clone. What do you think of that? Have some bondage. And then he puts her in bondage, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously. He puts her in a special bondage machine that takes her powers and makes the bondage stronger. Because, just to point out, just for clarity, Chris Claremont did in fact write this. And he's like, nah, you were a clone the whole time. That whole thing about being Madelyne Pryor and it being a coincidence, we were just messing. You were a clone. So you've made a demonic pact, and you were a clone the whole time. So I guess the X-Men can beat you up without any sort of moral implications.
I wouldn't even mind, only it's the second demonic pact she makes.
Mad.
It's mental. So she makes one with Siyim, or Siyim, I don't know how to say it. And then the X-Men fix that. But she's forced to interact with Scott again and is reminded, oh, this guy really is a fucking scumbag. And she goes, do you know what? I'm actually going to go get my own demon this time. So she makes a deal with a demon called Nastrith. Yeah. And Nastrith is like, well, if you think you've been traumatized enough, here's my pal Mr. Sinister, Victorian Doctor Extraordinaire. He's got something to tell you.
Yeah, and his name's Nathan as well, so that's good, isn't it?
That's good, isn't it? Yeah, Chris was running out there. He was reading his notes and he couldn't read his own handwriting. He's like, I've named the kid Nathan.
Who's called Nathan?
I've also
again?
named Mr. Sinister Nathan.
Uh-oh.
Whoa, very confusing.
Was that subconscious? So it turns out Mr. Sinister did create her. So she went from a perfectly normal and lovely woman that Scott fell in love with, even though it was a little bit creepy that she looked exactly like his dead ex, went off, had a baby, and then they said, nah, that's not going to work for us. So clone, hell pact, evil, demonic, seductress, and Scott's also a wife and child abandon her because his girlfriend came back.
Fucking mad.
Absolute insanity. Just both in character and out of character. One of the maddest things that happened to that point in X-Men. And we haven't even talked about Cable.
No, we haven't touched on the techno-organic. One of the best sequences in that entire X-Men 97 episode 3 is where Sinister just dunks a baby in a vat of green liquid. He's just like, dunk. There you go. In the pot.
Put the baby in the magic pot.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is Madelyne Pryor, or the Goblin Queen.
Kinda.
It's fucking mental. It's fucking mental. Where do you go from here, Michael?
Don't know.
Where do you go from here? Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think of the Goblin Queen? Did Chris Claremont also awaken your inner lust for BDSM? Do you think that Scott Summers is the worst fucking leader of the X-Men ever? And would you give Wolverine his own gene clone if he shut the fuck up for a while?
Yeah.
Would you do it?
There you go, Wolverine. There, sort yourself out.
Gene, now that I have my chance.
Now that I have my own gene.
Donkey. Anyway, come here. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a few ways you can let us know what you thought of the Goblin Queen arc, or of anything we talked about in the episode this week. You can hop up on the interwebs at www.seomrabeag.com, seomrabeag.com.
It kind of means tiny room in Irish to a degree.
You can also find us on our other internet web thing, which is www.yourluxurylistenpodcast.acast.com.
It's the website of the podcast. Benjamin, look, every podcast is someone's first podcast, so it's grand. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely. I've never done a wrap up before, so this is new territory
First
for me. You can also find us on Instagram, where they've taken us out of shadow prison.
Yay!
Sort of, maybe, I don't know. You can find us up there at Your Luxury Listen Podcast.
We're going to be flying next week, Ben, because it's just going to be 24/7 Madelyne Pryor content.
Yeah, people are just going to click on it for the thumbnails alone.
Very good.
That's what I do. But come here to me. You can also find us on TikTok at Your Luxury Listen.
You can't. I can't. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, you're too busy lusting after Chris Claremont and thigh highs. You can also, ladies and gentlemen, the best way for you to get in touch with either myself or Michael directly.
Yes.
Don't share your content with us directly there, ladies and gentlemen, and none of your Madelyne Pryor content directly there. But you can get in touch with us on our Discord. It's down there in the description. Just hop up on it.
Hop up on it and tell us what you thought of X-Men 97 and why it's the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Yeah, go on, let us know. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it from us for this week. You can join us next week when we'll be taking a look at what even is a Eurojank game. What is that?
What is that? We talked about it last week, but then we got too excited about X-Men.
It was all the thigh highs and shiny leather.
Ben, I hope X-Men isn't too good this weekend, or else we'll have to do another episode about X-Men next week.
I'm more than happy to turn this into the X-Men 97 fan cast.
Yeah, it's only 8 episodes.
I will make the thumbnail out of a Wolverine with 2 genes in his eyes.
Gene.
And that's what Gene.
Right. Okay, bye.